And we are live. How about that? Well, welcome to the second installment of the channel CEO interview series. I'm with Reinier Moquete. Did I say that properly?
Close enough.
Close enough. We were rehearsing this backstage, so yeah, there's a lot of pressure. I was going to try a fancy pronunciation, but I figured I'd embarrass myself, and so here we are. But thanks for joining me today, nevertheless.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Kevin.
Yeah.
It's interesting because my name, I pronounce it in Spanish, but it's a Dutch name, and then my last name is French.
Huh. I imagine we're gonna explore that. We're gonna explore
I'm a
the
walking United Nations.
yeah. We're gonna dive deep into that. Figure out
There
this
you go.
this background here. But no, thanks for joining me. This is I mentioned this is the second installment, and we've got a great series lined up. I think we're booked up through actually almost Q1 of next year with these installments of the channel CEO. So I'm thrilled to have you on. So we're gonna jump right in. Let me pull up some of my hard hitting questions here. So kind of give a little primer about who you are, but why don't you just start by giving us a who you are? Tell us a bit about yourself and where you're from, and let's jump in from there.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Reinier Moquete. I'm the CEO and founder for Cyberwarrior.com. I'm based in Massachusetts. I spend my time between Massachusetts and different parts of traveling across Latin America. And happy to be here, excited to see everything that you've done in the cybersecurity space, and look forward to getting to know the program a little bit more and seeing how we can contribute to it.
Good deal. So we're gonna we're gonna dive deep. We're gonna do a little bit different spin on these typical interview series. So all right, let's take me back to your young self. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Dominican Republic. So I was born in New York City. I spent my childhood going back and forth between New York, Dominican Republic. And, it gave me a pretty interesting perspective, both from that of an entrepreneur, but at the same time, an immigrant family in New York City, and at the same time, a lower middle class family in Dominican Republic. So I had a lot of different perspectives in my day to day as a child, and that's informed a lot of who I am today as an adult.
Good deal. So you're born in New York, I guess. Was it constant back and forth to Dominican or
Constant. I went
constant?
through more than a dozen schools, K through 12.
Wow.
Yeah, I was absolutely insane.
Is that family kind of obviously family ties back and forth, but what was prompting the going back and forth so much?
To be candid, my mom was trying to balance a marriage in Dominican Republic while trying to look for opportunity for our family here in the States. So she would come, work, save as much money as possible, move back. Sometimes I would go with her and be here in the U.S. for a year, then go back. So it was just this immigrant story of someone who's trying to create opportunity for her family, and that was really the crux of it.
Wow. So you're in Massachusetts now. So do you identify as a New Yorker, or is it a conflict living in Massachusetts, or is it Dominican first, or which one is it?
Well, I've been here for 22 years, so I don't boo the Red Sox anymore.
Okay.
Unless they're playing the Yankees.
Okay.
So.
All right. Now your true colors are coming out. There we go. I appreciate that. All right. Cool. Very cool. So back and forth, I guess, take me through, I guess early high school days. What were you like in high school?
Honestly, man, I was a troublemaker. I was always getting into trouble. And it was one of those things where, trying to find myself as a kid. I always had an entrepreneurial bug. And so even since my early years in elementary school, I was always looking for different business opportunities, different things to do. My first business was at 6 years old. I was selling uses of my video game. I had a little video game that my mom had bought me, and I would let kids from the neighborhood play for it for 25 cents. I had a paper route at 11. Actually, before that, at 9 years old, I used to buy leather in the market, and I used to make these little bracelets and sell them in school. So, and then as a teen, I was essentially just trying to find my place in the world after all that movement, after all that moving around. And at 20 years old, I found myself in Massachusetts after again and a lot of instability. But I've been here now for 23 years, so it's been an interesting ride.
Oh, very cool. So you got the bug early on. I love the hustle early on, especially with the video games and charging friends a quarter for to play a video game.
Well, my
That's
close
some
friends got it for free, so
okay.
perhaps the business wasn't that sustainable. But the kids from the street next door, they had to pay.
You get the friends and family discount going on. All
There
right,
you go.
that's respectable. But no, so that's really interesting. Like early on, kind of had the I don't know the called foresight, or just you kind of had the entrepreneurial bug or gene or the hustle gene or something along those lines. That's really interesting. It's really interesting. So
I get it from my mom. She was always looking for different business opportunities. She would go to New York. She'd buy, 10 suitcases worth of clothing. She'd bring it to Dominican Republic, and she'd set up a boutique in the porch. Um, so it was constant. That was a constant thing growing up and seeing that, and that really created, again, that entrepreneurial bug.
do you have early memories of watching her like transact, like, the sales process or negotiating or haggling or anything? Or
Um, Not really. I mean, she was very entrepreneurial, but she wasn't that great in business in the sense that someone would come to her and saying, "Oh, I don't have money," and she'd just give it to them. And so that perhaps was not very sustainable. So in that sense, I didn't really get that much exposure in terms of her haggling. But what I did see was someone, both her and my dad, who worked extremely hard, and so that work ethic was something that I got early on.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So fast forward to the troublemaker years, in high school. What kind of trouble did you get into?
I was just always getting into fights, man. I mean, it was just I grew up in a different environment. In my high school years, I was mostly in New York, and I grew up in a very, very rough neighborhood. Lots of lots of craziness happening that you'd expect within underserved communities, and so that forced you to get pretty hard pretty quick in order for you to
Mm,
just kind of survive, if you will.
wow.
So it was a very different experience than what I had in Dominican Republic, where it was very call it a naive upbringing. Growing up in Washington Heights, you had to, in the part of New York City that I'm from, you had to grow up pretty darn quick, and so it was a different, very different environment in high school than it was in elementary and middle school.
Wow. Wow. It's pretty heavy stuff. So what happened after high school?
I moved to Massachusetts. I was looking for an opportunity. I was looking for an opportunity to do something with my life, and it just wasn't happening in New York City. And so I I got on a bus, had a little uh, had a little note with an address of where I was going. It was my mother's cousin here in Boston, and $200, two backpacks, a suitcase. That was September of 1999, and that's how I showed up to Massachusetts.
Holy cow. What was that? Was there, you know, by distance, right? New York and Massachusetts, a couple hundred miles, but was there a cultural difference? Was there, what was noticeably different between, New York and Boston?
I moved to Dorchester, and so I mean, number one, the buildings, right? Like the architecture of it, that was pretty a culture shock, if you will. Um, and I think that it wasn't that much the difference in the environments because when I moved to Dorchester, it was a fairly hectic environment as well. But I think that what was different was me. I just wanted to do something different with my life, and I just put my head down and I focused. So I think at that point it was really me deciding that I wanted something else, and then having the discipline to follow through on that.
Awesome. So you get to Boston, kind of a new focus. I mean, what, what ended up happening next? I mean, what changed, I guess, when you got up there?
Well, I mean, candidly, the moment I got here, it was really trying to improve my life. And so I got here in September. Within a month or so, I was working. When I first started working, the first job that I could get was actually in a factory. And I told someone that I knew how to use a computer, which not really, I barely know how to use a computer. But still, it got me the job. And so, I was like doing these things. But within like a couple of weeks later, I got another job at a small telecom company doing customer service. And it was through a staffing agency. And I remember the lady at the staffing agency saying, "Well, how much money are you looking for?" And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, well, let me highball her and see what she said. And I said, $9 an hour. And she sits back. She's like, "Oh, no, no, no." And I'm ready to tell her I'll take 6, right? And keep in mind, the staffing agency makes money. The more I made, the more they made. She's like, "No, no, we're going to get you at least $13, $14 an hour." And my eyes opened up like this. It far exceeded my expectations at the time. Looking back on that, it's pretty funny how things change. So anyway, so that was my first real entry into the IT space. I worked at a telecom company, answering people's questions on their phone bills and things like that. But I worked really hard. I used to show up at the call center at 8 in the morning. I used to leave at 8 p.m. when it would shut down. And so I would take every single hour shift that was available. But then I would also learn from others, right? And there was a technical support group. And by coincidence, my cubicle was next to someone who was a technical support rep. And so I would listen, and I would ask questions. And, within a year, I was a technical support rep. A year after that, I was a supervisor for the technical support group. By the time I moved here at 20, by the time I was 23, I had 45 people working for me. And so I think that, yes, I had a lot of adversity to get to where I am, but at the same time, it's really about hard work. My story is no different than anyone else's. I'm sure you had tons of adversity coming up in your own way, and we all do. And I think that one of the things that's important to realize is that it's really up to us to decide what we want for ourselves and for our families. And I mentioned the family piece because, from the culture that I come from, family is key. Family is everything. And so when you're thinking about why you're going to work hard, you're doing it not just for yourself, but you're doing it for everybody around you. Because if you make it, they're going to make it.
Oh, I love that. It's just you succeed, everyone else succeeds. You kind of elevate everyone around you. That's beautiful. I love it. What's interesting, and I don't want to jump ahead too much, but it's interesting if you go through your LinkedIn background and you just see how much you do from an advisory standpoint and just giving back standpoint. I think it's another really interesting theme I want to pull on here in a moment, but we'll kind of build up to that. So take me through. So, kind of 20, 24, and then, I see you had Pace University and you've done stuff with Dartmouth and Stanford. Take me through kind of the kind of formative education years and what's that all about? What did you learn and what did you take away from all those years?
To be candid, I just wanted to get through school. I knew that I needed a degree, at least where I was coming from, and the time that we were in the world. I needed a degree. Today, there's such a thing as you being able to get a job without a degree, and what you really need is certifications, particularly in cybersecurity, the world that I'm in. But back then, without a college degree, it just was not going to happen for me. And so I used to work 60, 70 hours a week, and I used to go to school full time. I used to go to school Monday through Thursday, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., and then Saturdays, 9 to 1. And I did that for 4 years. And so I went to a community college. I went to Bunker Hill Community College. From Bunker Hill, I went to UMass Boston. And it's interesting because when I graduated Bunker Hill, I got a full scholarship to go to Northeastern, very well-known school here in Massachusetts, great school. but I felt embarrassed to ask anyone what the different programs were. And although I had a full boat, I didn't understand the curriculum. I didn't understand the career options that I had. And I remember looking at this program that they had, electrical engineering, computer science, but I'd never heard of an electrical engineer, and I didn't know what that was. And so I'm like, the closest thing I knew was an electrician. And in Dominican Republic, electricians are like, they're fixing ceiling fans and air conditioners. I'm like, damn, I'm gonna go to school all this time so I can fix ceiling fans and air. I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. And I passed up on it. But again, it was not having guidance, and so that's the reason why I do all the give back work that I do. Because if I would have had the right mentorship, I would have been a lot further in my career. And so, yes, I've done leadership development programs at Talk, at Stanford, MIT, different things. But these are very tailored programs to entrepreneurs, particularly entrepreneurs of color that they're trying to help, and they're geared towards helping you scale your business. So I've had an opportunity to participate in programs at those great schools. But when I was a kid growing up, I was at community college, and it was Bunker Hill that gave me an opportunity to really get an education, not only because of the schedule, but also the support that I received as someone that was in such a major life transition. So if I were to take off my hats to anybody, then I would start there.
Wow. So you saw my visual excitement when you mentioned Bunker Hill Community College, because I too had a brief stint at Bunker Hill Community College. Yeah, way back in the day.
Yeah, what year was that in?
That was 1995, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd moved up to just up the hill right there in Charlestown.
Okay.
And there were townies and out of townies, and they made sure to let us know that we were out of townies. Yeah, and so I did a couple courses there, and Northeastern actually was where I wanted to go, but circumstances had me move back to Maryland. I went to community college in Maryland and ended up getting into the University of Maryland. But yeah, so you said Bunker Hill. I hadn't heard Bunker Hill in quite some time, so very cool to hear the old Bunker Hill Community College. Awesome, very cool.
Cool.
So you had this really interesting matriculation, right? And it's that's amazing that there are entrepreneurship courses and programs and groups that help all types of entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, minority entrepreneurs, but you've gone through many of them, right? And I think that's really interesting that you've levered a lot of those resources. And again, one of the really interesting arcs I think you see, kind of just at least going through your LinkedIn profile, is that you've levered those organizations, and you do a lot in giving back and providing something similar as well. We'll get there in a second, but I want to hear how you got to cyberwarrior.com. I want to hear. Tell me about that progression. So you got the schooling, and then obviously you're sounds like a born entrepreneur, but what led you down this path of cyberwarrior.com and then just cybersecurity in general, maybe?
Sure. Cyber Warrior brings together a lot of what I've done throughout my life, both in terms of giving back and philanthropy, as well as what I've done in business. I went off on my own as an entrepreneur in 2012, so it's been over a decade now that I put up a shingle and decided to create a business and have all my eggs in that entrepreneurial basket, right? Where, as you know, as an entrepreneur, if you're not driving revenue, you're not selling, your family's not eating. So it's challenging. I started this business, and the first business I started in 2012 as a systems integrator, with the goal of helping clients do cloud projects. Essentially, at that point, I had come from another large value-added reseller systems integrator, and I was doing a lot of work with VMware. And so when I started that business, is with the goal of helping people move towards cloud computing. At the same time, I started yet another business with a group of folks geared towards cybersecurity, physical security, emergency management. We were trying to do these different things. Eventually I decided that that relationship didn't make sense, and that I was just going to continue off on my own. And so that business evolved. I did a whole bunch of different entrepreneurial journeys over the years, some successful, others not. But I lacked focus. I had way too many things going on, too many different business, too many different ideas. And that's a common thing for us entrepreneurs. We tend to chase the shiny penny. But it's a big detriment because you're not focused and you tend not to be successful at any of them. And so over the last few years, I've been able to focus more. The last 5, 6, 7 years, I've really been honing in on cybersecurity. And I stopped doing pretty much everything else that I had going on. I shut it down and just focused my energy on cybersecurity. Yet the pandemic really was a reset for us. I had a business that was doing consulting services. I had a lot of revenue concentration. And as things evolved with the pandemic, a lot of the major organizations, major corporations started cutting down on consultants. And so I saw my revenue dip. At the same time, with Cyberwarrior Academy, I had a really strong partnership with the University of Massachusetts. Great institution. We were really aiming to do some interesting things together with training people in cybersecurity on site, on campus. 1 week we're on site, touring dorms, getting ready for a big initiative that we were going to do together. And then 2 weeks later, the school shut down because of the pandemic. And so that totally wiped off, the business model that we had been preparing for, all the work that we had been doing operationally in order to execute on the partnership with UMass. And it really forced us to go back to the drawing board. And so we relaunched cyberwarrior.com at the beginning of 2021. And what cyberwarrior.com is today is a cybersecurity training and services delivery organization. We train people and we put them to work. In a world where there are 4 million open cybersecurity jobs, 715,000 open cybersecurity jobs in the US alone, that's what we try to solve for. We solve the cybersecurity talent shortage by training people and putting them to work, end-to-end talent development, talent delivery.
So it's fascinating. You hear a lot of stories, a lot of similar stories, and some that don't turn out quite as well. So that 2 weeks into COVID and the lockdown, you had some folks that picked up their bag and said, we got to pivot and we got to figure this out and we're going to do it. And, you kind of trudge through COVID and they've turned, difficult situations and circumstances into incredible businesses. And then you hear some that just, for whatever reason, they just couldn't adapt quick enough, or this business model was completely obsolete and it just made it even that much more obsolete. But you were able to pivot and create hard times into something I think sounds like pretty special. I mean, what were your thoughts, when you're going from, figuring this thing out with the university to 2 weeks later, the whole world's shutting down? What was that like for you?
I was scared. I mean, I was just scared. I mean, first and foremost, the human side of it, right? I mean, the first thing that I was worried about was my family. And how do I get access to masks and all kinds of things? And I was just first and foremost the health of my family. I remember I spent $1,000 buying face and safety equipment, and I still have a box full of stuff because I didn't know what was going to go on, and found myself at BJ's and Costco buying canned food and all kinds of stuff because all hell's broken loose. But from a business perspective, I was pretty scared because it was totally a shock to see all my revenue go away, and at the same time, the business that I was preparing for and I was super excited about, that wasn't going to happen. I mean, who's going to go into the classroom in a pandemic? I mean, all the schools shut down, right? And so it was just one of those things where I just didn't have a choice but to pivot, but to reimagine what we were doing And it was what it was because, I have 3 children and they needed to eat. So what am I going to do? And so, we simply had to pull ourselves by the bootstrap and wipe off the blood and tears and say, okay, it is what it is. How we're going to move forward.
So what's one thing, or maybe there's several things, but what's one thing that is interesting that's happened or evolved with the business that you never really anticipated? Even going back 2 years ago. What's anything come to mind?
Well, first of all, we've built an online educational platform that I had no intention of building. We've built this platform that's available in both English and Spanish. By the end of the year, it's also going to be available in Portuguese. You could go to online.cyberwarrior.com, and it's a brand new educational platform that we had zero intention of building. Yet that is now key to our growth strategy. And so we've developed that online platform. The goal is to give people access to cybersecurity training resources in multiple languages. I'm an immigrant. I understand that there's a lot of folks, not only in the US, but across the world that need access to training and want to better their families. We want to make that to be as accessible as possible. So that's an example of something that we built as a result of the pivot that we made. Now, candidly, we've been using that platform internally for months because we have a school, right? So we built the online platform. We've been consuming it internally, but now we're releasing it to the public. And so that was a big, big shift because, again, we had no intention of doing so. But as a result of the new business model, had to adapt.
So along those lines, you guys are providing obviously tremendously valuable education. To your point, the volume of just jobs that are out there that are open, that are unfilled, and the need moving forward is massive, right? Not just to fill these jobs, but just to keep up and just stay protected. I mean, what are your thoughts? I always talk about this concept, and it's getting better, but there's a maturity curve or maturity curve in the MSP space, in a broader kind of IT service provider space, where you've got a significant percentage of the market that's still in that immature, and mature, maybe to a maturing side of the marketplace, and you've got some that are mature, and then you got some that really, really get it.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts, or what's your advice for MSPs that are looking to keep up or up their game?
Well, first of all, let's call it what it is. They don't have a choice. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to understand that if you are an MSP and you are not adding cybersecurity to your portfolio, you're not going to be around for much longer, because what's going to happen is that the next guy is going to come in and they're going to start offering those services to your accounts, and they're eventually going to erode your MRR, right? It is what it is. In our case, what we're doing is that we're making available the talent pool that we have, right? We're training people all over the globe, and we're building an MSP wholesale model, if you will, where we're not providing services directly, but rather empowering MSPs and MSSPs to get access to the workforce and talent that they need. And so if you're an MSP and you're trying to build that up, then great. Maybe we give you an FTE, or maybe a fraction of an FTE for you to be able to deliver those services. I think that first of all, understanding the risks that are out there is key, and then partnering with not only the folks like us that have the human capital, but there's a lot of technology solutions that enable you to string together different cloud offerings in order for you to strengthen the security posture of your customer base. And I think that talking to small businesses about digital transformation and the impact that cloud can have and automation can have, and how security is almost like having guardrails on the train. If those guardrails are well built, that train is going to be able to go faster. So I think that MSPs need to understand that and then need to be able to communicate that properly to small businesses.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, you're so spot on, and you couldn't have timed the market any better. I mean, it's just obviously it's been a lingering problem or lagging problem for years, but it's an absolute, it's an imperative these days to the way you put it. I mean, it's just well timed. If you could look forward 5 years from now, what does cyberwarrior.com look like?
Cyber Warrior is 5 years from now is the #1 cybersecurity education, cybersecurity talent delivery platform on the globe.
Wow.
That's simple.
Yeah. I like how simple and concise that is. I mean, that's awesome. The name Cyber Warrior, how'd you come up with that?
Well, I think that cybersecurity professionals are among the most underappreciated people out there. Folks tend not to understand how difficult it is to be a good cybersecurity professional and all the battle scars that you have. Not only do you have to understand all these different pieces of technology, but you're in a situation where you got to patch and address all these gaps. An attacker only needs to find one problem. And so there's so many scars, if you will, that us as cyber warriors have, that I think that the name just needed to do justice to the folks in the trenches.
That's awesome. So we touched on it earlier, maybe a couple times, about your giving back and what you do. Any is a good way to kind of wrap this up, but any thoughts on giving back? I mean, what value has that brought to you, as a CEO, as a person, over the last couple of years?
I don't work anymore, to be very candid. I absolutely love what I do. I am having so much fun. And the reason for that is because with every dollar that I make, I create $5 for society. We're helping people come up out of poverty with what we're doing. We view cybersecurity as an economic development opportunity for people that are underserved and that would otherwise not have access to the tech industry. And so we've engineered our business to be a catalyst for economic development for others. And in doing so, we have this satisfaction that comes from knowing that we're making a difference with everything that we do. And I think that many business owners have that same opportunities. I mean, take MSPs, for example. I mean, create an apprenticeship program, help people get into tech support, help them get their A+. And many a times you can structure things in collaboration with nonprofits in your region, where you can take kids coming up out of high school, teach them things like, structured cabling, teach them how to take a phone call and provide services. There's a lot of things that are happening in our day-to-day businesses that are great learning opportunities for others. Think about what those are within your organization. Partner with your favorite nonprofit, partner with your favorite career center, and create that window of opportunity within your organization to develop talent, grow talent, and it just changes your perspective on why you wake up every morning.
That's awesome. I love it. Absolutely love it. And so that's a great way to kind of wrap this up. Where can people find out more about you, about the company?
Cyberwarrior.com.
Cyberwarrior.com.
It's that simple.
Awesome. Well, look, I want to thank you for taking some time. You have just one hell of an impressive background, and glad to hear that we have the Bunker Hill Community College, ties in our backgrounds here. But I really thank you for taking some time and joining us, and look forward to watching you guys grow and do what you do. So thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity, Kevin. Talk to you soon.
You got it.
All right, bye.